Rugged, tough, resilient, extra thick. All of these terms can be used to describe the iconic M1 Abrams battle tank. The Abrams has become renowned from its 45 years of service, but its origin story is definitely lesser known and involves some unexpected characters. In 1963, America decided to team up with the Germans to develop a new battle tank in order to increase cooperation and interoperability between the two nations. Unfortunately, the development of the new tank was plagued by disagreements between America and Germany. One of the biggest disagreements between the two nations was over what unit of measurement to use while drafting prototypes. I'm not joking. After further disagreements about nearly every aspect of the tank's design, the partnership between the two countries ended in 1970. America attempted to salvage the work put into the program by redesigning aspects of the tank, but in 1971, Congress officially canceled the project and the U.S. Army had to start from scratch. In 1973, the Tank Automotive and Armaments Command, or TACOM, produced a design for a new prototype tank. This tank was specifically made with the requirement that it be able to withstand any hits from a Soviet anti-tank gun within 800 meters, as tensions were rising between the two superpowers. Having lost their partnership with the German tank designers, America turned to its old pal Great Britain for inspiration. It was decided that the main gun would be modeled after the 105mm British Royal Ordnance L7 gun. America also planned to add a 20mm M242 Bushmaster chain gun, though the chain gun ended up being dropped from the final model. America also incorporated the British Burlington armor for the tank's body material, as it performed exceptionally well against newer armor-piercing explosives. One issue with the Burlington armor, however, is that it was thick. Very thick.
Damn, boy, he's thick, boy!
The body armor of the tank ended up having a thickness of 2 full feet in some areas. For reference, America's previous battle tank had an armor thickness of just 4 inches. Thus, the original goal of keeping the tank under 45 tons was completely abandoned.
That's a thick-ass boy!
The armor wasn't the only new thing about the Abrams. The Abrams was also the first tank to be designed mostly by private contractors. In this case, Chrysler and General Motors went head-to-head to try and impress the military with their prototypes. After extensive testing, military advisors decided they favored the GM prototype as it had superior engine reliability and fuel efficiency, while also being slightly cheaper to produce. All seemed to be going well for GM until the time came to actually propose their prototype to the Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld. Rumsfeld had been convinced that the new tank had to have a turbine engine, which the GM prototype did not have. Luckily for Chrysler, their prototype did have such an engine. Thus, for purely political reasons, Chrysler ended up winning the contract to produce the next generation of America's battle tanks. Pre-production versions of Chrysler's tank were produced in 1978, and it didn't take long for quality issues to become apparent. In early models, the tracks were fitted too loosely, and random debris had a tendency to get thrown into the engine due to poorly fitting air filters. Government watch agencies also criticized the high cost of the new tank, as well as its high fuel consumption. Nevertheless, tank experts were greatly impressed, and the Pentagon gave its blessing to go ahead with full-scale production in early 1980s. It was also around this time that the tank was given its final name, the M1 Abrams, named for General Creighton Abrams, who commanded military operations in Vietnam in the late 60s and early 70s. By 1985, a little over 3,000 Abrams were produced, and each Abram was an Americanized version of the British 105mm main gun. The M1's armor was made of ceramic composites with carbon nanotubes. This composite material was cutting edge for the time, being specifically designed to dissipate the impact forces from explosives. Additionally, tests were run in cooperation with the British and the Germans that determined a 120mm main gun would be better suited for the burly Abrams tank. Thus, the M1A1 variant was developed that featured the German 120mm Rheinmetall gun. By the early 90s, over 9,000 Abrams tanks were produced at a price of about $4.3 million per unit, with about 5,000 of the tanks being the M1A1 variant. These newer variants also sported newer composite armor made with depleted uranium and other materials still classified to this day. Most training on the Abrams took place in Western Europe and exercises aimed at countering Soviet forces, as again, tensions were rising between the two superpowers. Training tank crews on the Abrams platform continued until 1991, when the Abrams would see its first real action. As with most of America's modern equipment, the Abrams was put to its first test in the Gulf War. The U.S. Army deployed a total of almost 2,000 M1A1 models to Saudi Arabia in preparation for the liberation of Kuwait. The Marine Corps also deployed around 300 of their own Abrams, referred to as the M1A1HC. A fun fact is that the HC variant of the Abrams comes equipped with the ability to drive through deep water and has extra uranium inserts that make the armor even more durable. The Abrams absolutely dominated the battlefield in its first outing. It was far superior to the Soviet T-72 tanks used by the Iraqi military in several ways. The first advantage being that the T-72 lacked night vision and a modern rangefinder system. 0 Abrams were destroyed by direct enemy fire, and very few even sustained damage from the enemy during the Gulf War. The Abrams impressed battlefield commanders with its ability to destroy targets from over 1.5 miles away. This proved to be its greatest advantage, as the Abrams could destroy enemy tanks before the Iraqi forces could even begin returning fire. The next operation the Abrams would take part in was, surprisingly, not a foreign conflict. During the Waco siege in 1993, the FBI borrowed 2 Abrams from the military. The thick armor of the tanks were required by the FBI, as it was confirmed that the cult members were in possession of .50 caliber weapons. The Abrams continued its winning streak in 2003 during Operation Iraqi Freedom. A highlight for the Abrams was when one single Abrams single-handedly destroyed 7 Iraqi tanks in a point-blank skirmish. As the war in Iraq pressed on, however, the Abrams was really put to the test. By 2005, about 80 Abrams were put out of action by enemy attacks. By 2006, over 500 Abrams had been shipped back to the U.S. for critical repairs. In more recent history, 31 M1 Abrams were sent to Ukraine as part of a larger aid package. Each of these tanks were refurbished models from 1986. Of these 31 tanks, 21 have been reported as lost since 2023, with one even being displayed in Moscow as a war trophy. It has been reported that a combination of hunter-killer drones and muddy ground have made conditions difficult for the Abrams to operate effectively, demonstrating that all it takes are the wrong conditions for feared military vehicles to become vulnerable. Even though the Abrams has taken a fair amount of punishment in recent years, its defensive capabilities are still cutting edge. The Abrams composite armor is mostly kept secret, but there are some interesting observations we can make about it. It is made of ceramic blocks, glued in between conventional metal armor plates, using a special type of resin. The ceramic plates act as reactive armor, disrupting anti-tank explosives. The way the reactive armor works is quite fascinating. When an explosive impacts the exterior armor, the ceramic plates bend, bounce, and shatter, causing the shock wave to refract in different directions, making the overall force of impact less extreme. There are also automated fire extinguishers distributed throughout the engine bay and crew compartment to prevent damage from spreading in dangerous situations. The Abrams even has measures to protect against chemical and nuclear threats. Some Abrams are equipped with optional trophy systems that can destroy incoming enemy projectiles before impact is even made. The Abrams measures a little over 32 feet long and has a width of 12 feet, or one adult male bottlenose dolphin. The Abrams' thick armor has caused it to be one of the heaviest tanks on the modern battlefield, weighing in at about 60 tons. Luckily, the immense power of the Honeywell AGT engine puts out a roaring 1,500 horsepower that allows the Abrams to comfortably reach speeds over 40 miles per hour. For comparison, the American M60 Patton tank, the Abrams' predecessor, could only handle speeds around 30 miles per hour. The Abrams obviously sees most of its use by the United States military, but some of its users may shock you. Around 2015 and 2016, 3 Abrams tanks were seen used by Kataib Hezbollah, an Iranian-backed paramilitary group in Iraq that has been responsible for attacks on U.S. coalition forces in the Middle East. Instances like these serve as a reminder why America is so strict about destroying its own equipment to prevent it from falling into enemy hands. What does the future hold for the Abrams tank? The U.S. Marine Corps has actually already phased out the usage of all battle tanks in favor of vehicles that are more naturally suited for amphibious warfare. As of now, the Army is the only branch of the military that employs the Abrams. Some speculate that the Abrams could see the end of its service in the next 20 or so years. The military has, in fact, began some programs to try and design a successor to the Abrams. Little is known about these programs except that the Army has shown high interest in unmanned battle vehicles that would be cheaper to produce and maintain while not putting soldiers' lives at risk. The M1 E3 Abrams has also been conceptualized, in which the Abrams would be brought into the age of the future. This model would have a hybrid electric drivetrain, an automated loading system, the ability to launch guided missiles, and the ability to coordinate and work in sync with robotic combat vehicles. For now, however, the Abrams has become so well suited for modifications and upgrades that there hasn't been a huge rush to develop its replacement. Whatever the future holds in store for the Abrams, one thing is sure: it will most certainly go down in history as a legendary battle tank that has served as a perfect representation of America's raw fighting power.